Welcome to CivilNet. On December 6, Armenian citizens headed to the polls to vote in a referendum, a critical referendum, on a package of constitutional amendments that would, among other things, change the governance system of Armenia from a semi-presidential to a parliamentary one. There were several observation missions taking part in the election, among them a citizen observation mission and another mission from the European Platform for Democratic Elections. Joining me here in the studio are representatives from the EPDE who will speak to us about their impressions of the vote, the violations, the conduct of the commissions within each polling district, and hopefully prospects for the future. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Adam Busuleanu, you are the program coordinator for the EPDE, the European Platform for Democratic Elections, and Roman Udot, you are an expert with the organization, plus you are part of an organization called Movement Golos from Russia. Adam, I'd like to start with you before we talk about the actual nuts and bolts of what took place on December 6th. Tell me about your organization and how was it that you came to Armenia to work with the Citizen Observer Initiative?
The European Platform for Democratic Elections is a coalition of domestic citizen election observation groups, organizations, and they observe elections in their countries. Which countries? In the countries of Eastern Partnership. It means Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, and Russia. So what we are doing, we are supporting them. It's kind of a sign of solidarity between the citizen observers from those different countries. And also in this platform, there are organizations from the EU and Norway, from Poland, from Germany, from Sweden, which support the domestic observers in the field during the elections, before and after. So this is what we basically do is we don't send extra observation missions, but we try to strengthen the visibility of the domestic observers.
Right.
We help them with expertise, with expert groups, with media work, with via trainings and peer-to-peer learning, and we make we organize also like internships and trips of our members, different members, to support the observation missions. They are in the field. Right. So we work here in Armenia. Our members are Transparency International Anti-Corruption Center and the Helsinki Citizens Assembly Vanadzor. So basically supported them in their media work.
Right, so is this the first time that you have brought or you have come to Armenia to take part with Transparency International and the Helsinki Citizens Association?
Yeah, our cooperation started already in 2012 when we set up the platform.
Okay.
And we observed already in the last presidential elections. Okay. So this is the second time we are supporting our partners in Armenia. Yeah, we try to strengthen the visibility on the international level.
I think you did a good job because this time, because this time their visibility, at least from our perspective, has increased. We heard a lot about the citizen observers. We saw the work they did using digital technology, using social media, posting their videos, posting their comments, tweeting. So it really helped us in the media to get information second by second. So I must congratulate you to say that this time it worked, I think, and hopefully it will expand. Because, I'll switch over to you now, Roman, because we were reporting that there were about 1,000 citizen observers, but I think there were only about 700 citizen observers that were deployed to about 500 polling stations throughout Armenia. Whatever the numbers are.
Plus 700 journalists.
Right, so 1,400
observers as observers and as journalists. being in the field, being in a polling station.
Yeah, and the obvious question I want to ask you is, because you were there, you were following it, you know, the elections were marred by massive, I would say, perhaps subjectively, violations. What would your opinion be?
Yes,
What you saw?
I'm a fact finder, and I haven't counted all journalists and observers. I can tell you only for myself, and it was, for me as a fact finder, it's very profitable experience, because to find 3 cases of ballot box stuffing out of 6 polling stations, that's hilarious. Yes, it's unbelievable. It's a good luck for me as an observer, but of course...
Not such good luck for us, perhaps.
Yes, not good, so good for the country, and I'm from neighboring country, and I, of course, would prefer if your country would be democratic, and in this regard, it's awful. Yes, it's awful. You know, it's awful to see how people get cheated. It's awful to see how they get cheated, not only out of their votes. After that goes, they're cheating out of their money. I saw awful schools, cold, falling apart, unheated, and it's awful to see. In the beginning, you sell your vote. Later came, you give up your money. It's awful to see.
You know, in the press conference that you held the day after the elections, you said something that struck a chord with me, specifically you, Roman. You said that there are 2 Armenias. Yeah. Now, we can interpret that in many ways, but for me it was the Armenia that wants to be a democracy, the Armenia that does believe in the value of the ballot, in the value of the right and responsibility of citizenship. And then we have the Armenia that is not on that same track. What did you mean by that?
Maybe I get wrong, because my idea, my data, I was showing that they try, the authorities are trying to pretend that there is some split between city and regions, between educated people and simple people. In reality, there's not such a gap between them, and that second Armenia is imaginary, because it's falsified. It doesn't work on the streets. I saw this Armenia stuck on the bottom of the ballot box. It's just fantasy, and they try to impress you that, oh yes, of course, sorry guys, you were against referendum, but that other big Armenia voted for it. But in reality, that big Armenia doesn't exist at all. It is lying on the bottom of the ballot box stuffed box. Yes, neat stack. So my idea was that real people understand what's happened. And today we have some sort of a conversation, maybe even an argument with the head of the Transparency International. He was trying to say that, of course, Yerevan people from Yerevan, more or less Europeanly, democratically oriented, but far, far away in the mountains, people are awful. They stick to the old ways, and you see on the figures they have a 60% turnout. They have something, the same figure in support of referendum. And I told him story, because I was talking about some guy from St. Petersburg who went into those faraway village, God-forgotten village, and he was present on 2 polling stations all day long. Of course, he was very rather well-known and experienced Russian observer. He was staying there. He was trying to prevent any wrongdoings, and of course they were afraid. A foreigner came here. He was accredited by Central Election Commission, so they was afraid, and they did everything according to the rules. And you know, far away in the mountains, they have something about 25% of turnout. So the rest was imaginary. In the reality, there was only 20% of.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
It's official data. Now it's published.
Right, because I know that you're collecting all the data and you're doing a statistical analysis of all of that. Tell me, this is what we're hearing. I just want you to confirm it or say that it's in the right direction, that in those polling stations where there were citizen observers who were well trained, who knew their rights, who knew how the system had to operate, who stood their ground, who were not intimidated. In those polling stations, the no vote almost always won over the yes vote. Is this what you found? Or are you still collecting?
No, I'm still collecting. I don't have distribution of the observers so far. I have received only yesterday, and as I have told you, I'm a fact finder, so I can make something up. So far, even looking at, because you have to understand that sooner or later they will be accused that, oh, those distribution, maybe you rigged it. We don't know. Nobody was counting where observers were present, where they were not. So I have to use the more or less independently verifiable data, and in this case, your Central Election Commission website is a perfect example. I can download the data. It's absolutely 100% official, and even in that official data, you see abnormalities and something strange, and I at least can explain how one of the model which can explain what happened. It's a huge fraud, large-scale fraud.
Can you explain that? Or
do you need some little of statistical science?
Oh, okay, if it's too technical, then
it's
perhaps.
not too technical, but you have to understand that laws of the nature works the same way in Poland, in Ukraine, in Switzerland, and in Armenia.
Right, we're not from another planet,
Yep,
right?
Yep, exactly. Law of the nature, and the statistical distribution is the same here, like it's in the United States. So when you see on the statistical distributed votes, you usually see something like this, something bell-shaped curve or whatever. If somebody tries to distort these people, they think that nobody see it. Okay, let's steal these votes, let's steal that vote. But when you go up from the to say high level, I mean that when you see the whole picture, you see that this bell-shaped curve get disturbed, and somebody has stolen a huge bulk of it. So you can go online, you can compare, for example, even Ukrainian, Sweden, Switzerland, and you can look into Armenian distributions and see that it was hugely distorted.
Hugely distorted. I want to come back to you, Roman, in a bit. I want to ask Adam something. You know, you're working primarily in the post-Soviet space, right? Eastern Partnership. Yes. We have a long Soviet legacy, lingering strategies, the way that the Soviet system worked. You know, since independence in 1991, perhaps the only time that there was a free and fair election was the first election in Armenia. Since then, every election has been marred by violations, vote rigging, vote bribery. Sometimes they're a little bit better. This time it was worse. Do you see this pattern in those other countries? Or are there countries that are making some leaps toward democracy?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you would see a different picture now in Ukraine, for example, if you compare with the elections from 2000, even 2004 or 2000 or earlier. And today you just you don't see. There are of course many irregularities but they are not systematic, and they are not they do not impact the result. And there are many, you know, like we are all people, and nobody is perfect. So if you have this huge number of people involved in one process, you would ever have a kind of some problems will appear every time. But what we saw during the referendum, it was systemic, programmed, and a fraud of the elections, which is pity, and we of course kind of encourage only our friends, our colleagues from the organizations working here very hardly on to continue this work and to try to avoid it. And what we are also doing as a European platform, together with all our members, is to identify so-called fake observers coming on invitation of the authorities to those countries, saying already during the election day that everything was fine and perfect. It is a kind of also a kind of system, and a new one, involving deputies from even Western European countries coming to.
Were there fake observers in this election?
Yes, they were. There were some. We are still analyzing. We are still searching for new names, and we are, of course.
And you will publicize that?
Sure. We are preparing now an analysis. We did it last time in Azerbaijan when we have a long list of fake observers, and we try to intervene in the parliaments, in the international organizations, sending those people, requiring and demanding answers on who is sending those people and whether those organizations are happy with their statements. Etc. etc. So we are trying to do this. What we see in all this, or in the at least in the part of this region, post-Soviet region, in the countries which are our neighbors. That's why it is our motivation and obligation to help and to support. It is a kind of a very sophisticated process of very sophisticated methods to how to rig the elections. And what we understand now is that we have to look for another forms of election observations, because the I would say traditional way how to observe elections and only to collect statistical data and making political analysis, etc. It's not enough. It's not enough. Because we need new instruments, and Roman is our expert dealing with statistical data.
Speaking of those instruments and the sophisticated techniques, it sometimes boggles the imagination how creative people can be when they want to rig an election. I always say that if you have that much creativity, that much intelligence, that much energy to do it, why don't you gear it to doing something positive? But of course, I'm an idealist, and it never works like that in the real world. So tell me about some of the interesting kinds of violations that you found, because I also want to say this in case we forget, because in your report, at the press conference, you said that these elections do not reflect the will of the people.
Of course not. Let me turn a little bit back, because I'm just going to illustrate you how, in reality, laws of the nature works. And you see distribution of Mexico, Bulgaria, Sweden, Ukraine, Canada, Poland, first round, Poland, second round. You see, they all the same for all over the world. And I don't think that Armenia should be different from that.
Well, maybe we are.
Digging deeper into the situation. You asked Adam about ex-Soviet Union and what's happening. Yes, of course, sometimes the situation is awful, but even in well-known for fraud Russia, we have local temporary successes, and civil society was able to install, to observe, and to cause authorities to stick to the rules. And we have as well statistical support for that. We saw distorted distribution like Armenian style, and yes, huge masses of people.
This is what we can export to the world.
Yeah, it's absolutely identical. I can show you that fraud in Russia, fraud in Moscow is absolutely identical to fraud everywhere else. And free and fair elections have just shown you absolutely identical throughout.
Can you show us what fraud looks like?
Fraud looks like, okay, it's let's look like, I've shown you those beautiful,
the lovely bell curves,
lovely,
yes,
and they're very beautiful. And when you look into, for example, Armenia of a couple of days ago, you see that it's not that beautiful like it should be. And for example, you see that distribution of turnout, it's like something. It
looks like a bell curve.
It looks like, but it's distorted to this way. But the bigger distortion happened to the results, because in this case, you see that this absolutely, the stolen votes are bigger than original ones. You see that always, you don't believe me, but people in their heart, they're honest people. A lot of people exist on this planet who are honest, and they happens to be a chairperson of the commission. And in this case, we have a small amount of honest commissions and big amount of falsified. But it's not possible to falsify in reducing. You can only increase. It's not possible to get into box and steal some ballots. Right. You can stuff and stuff. You can stuff by envelopes, or you can stuff by people. I mean, multiple voting, right, or
the carousel.
Yes, carousel. So in this case, they only can increase. And in this case, we always see the initial beautiful
curve, and then you see that.
Yes, and then you see those votes who were stolen. So you see that from this picture, I think that the most votes were stolen not through ballot box stuffing or multiple voting, but through resorting. When you take no's and put in the stack with yeses, and then count by the corners. And in this case, turnout is not high, not distorted.
Okay.
Yes, but the votes, it's awful.
You know, a question. In some of the, you know, we were talking earlier about city and region, how villagers are perhaps less informed, sometimes more indifferent because they have been ignored for so many years and they have lost hope, and they think that we hear this oftentimes that, you know, what's the point for me to go to the election? They're going to rig the numbers as they want anyway. Can we say that the more people vote, actually physically go and exercise their right and responsibility as a citizen, that it is harder for them to rig the elections?
Of course.
So this is a message we need to get out to the Armenian population, to the Armenian voters, that the indifference only continues to compound the problem, that if they go out in large numbers and vote, it will make it more difficult.
Of course, it will make it impossible for them to steal. You have to understand technology of the stealing. If you are lucky enough to ballot box stuff ballots, sooner or later you have to falsify signatures, because number of signatures
has to match
with the number of ballots. And in this case, the high turnout they use those lines, those people who absentees, who regularly don't go to vote, and
or who live abroad,
left the country, and so on. In this case, the bigger turnout, the less the chances to falsify these places, because this list will be filled with real people. And sometimes it's a great problem for them when a real person comes and says, "Excuse me, my daughter is out of the country. Who put signature for her? My brother maybe is disabled person and he is at home. What's happened?" And so on and so on. And a lot of people came even 2 days ago. I heard. I haven't been a witness to that. Yeah. Many of them came and saw that somebody put a signature for that.
Sure, we filmed it, and you know, oftentimes they were saying, "Oh, it's just a simple error. Yep. You know, why don't you wait till 8 o'clock and we'll see who hasn't voted, and you can vote in place of someone else." And when the voter is saying, "But as a matter of principle, I want to be able to sign under my own name," she's saying, "What's the point? Isn't it important enough for you to?"
Yeah, but the basis, at the very bottom of the whole problem is the inaccurate voter lists. There is no accurate state voter register. There are many hundreds of thousands of people. They cannot vote because they are not residents of Armenia. They are outside, but they still, at least a part of those people, are still on the list. There are many dead souls, and so the lists are
another huge obstacle.
This is the first one. So from this point, you have to start. If the authorities want to really to improve the quality of elections, they should really start with the voters list.
I couldn't agree with you more. Are there any other interesting bell curves or unbell curves that you'd like to show us? in terms of statistics?
For example, I think that it's very interesting for me that in reality there's no difference between regions and Yerevan in this referendum affair. Yes, of course, the regional data is hugely distorted, and Yerevan has some distortion, but still a lot of observers, real participation of the people.
More media.
More honest chairpersons of the commissions, and you see that I set aside from the total country, yellow is Yerevan, and the lightly green is the rest of the country. And you see that the initial curve was something about the results. Yeses was something about 37% of people who cast their vote was yes, and so 63 against the idea of referendum. And the same situation happened to the regions, but their votes were stolen, and in the result, you know that we have look like a different Armenia.
Right.
But somebody is going to drive a wedge between you and that imaginary part of the Armenia. In reality, they think more or less the same about the referendum. I told you about that guy from St. Petersburg who came and observed, and these two precincts clear and fair data, and it's official. It looks like impossible because 70-80% of turnout and only 2 people. And why? My idea, because the observer was present, especially international and accredited by the Central Election Commission. So solution, because I don't like our pessimistic attitude, because in Russia, of course, it's awful situation now, but somewhere between 2011, 2012, we have a very bright movements, a bright period when people really get interested in the elections. They came in numbers to the polling stations, up to maybe 8 person per polling station. I'm talking at least about Moscow. And our distorted Armenian-style distributions suddenly became like in France and in Switzerland. And I can show you, proof it. It's always online. You can't believe me. You go online, download data.
You have to believe the data, right? Because it's right there. It's in black and white.
Right. Yes, we find it.
Okay, so just to wrap up our conversation, because it really is very fascinating and very interesting and very relevant, because it's only been a few days now since the referendum, and we will be heading into parliamentary elections in 2017, so there's a lot of work ahead. So the messages here are, we need bigger voter turnout.
And bigger number of observers.
And a bigger number of observers. And in that way, hopefully save the integrity of the electoral process in Armenia.
Yes. Because in reality, and my point about 2 Armenians was that electoral system is supposed to unite nation. It's supposed to bring agreement to the nation. And in your country, your authorities use it for other purposes, to divide it, to antagonize one real Armenia and imaginary Armenia, and to use it for their behalf, for their profits or whatever, I don't know.
But we have also today talks between Armenia and European Union, and I would also encourage the international institutions to look more on Armenia and to support the authorities, to encourage them to secure free and fair elections. I don't know if it's so easy, but I would really appreciate bigger involvement and bigger intervention of the international community.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for all the information. Thank you for the work that you did. Hopefully in 2017, after the parliamentary elections, you both will be in Armenia and we'll have this conversation again. Hopefully there will be some improvement. But in the meantime, we have a lot of work ahead of us. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
I'd like to remind our viewers that my guests were experts from the European Platform for Democratic Elections. We spoke about the referendum that took place in Armenia on December 6th that was marred by countless violations. We look forward to developing the electoral system so that we move toward a democracy together. Keep following CivilNet.